Cleopatra. Was she the most wicked woman in history? Or a true and tender lover who died for her husband? In the last century, details from the Queen's life has been much altered to fit in with Hollywood narratives. Critics accuse her 2023 documentary of distorting history and blackwashing. The discourse around the show quickly turned into a cesspool of hatred. Yet, critics failed to point out the much deeper history of Cleopatra's representation in the media, dating all the way back to ancient Roman propaganda. Join me as we explore the complex evolution of Cleopatra Theda Bara, the last pharaoh of Egypt, who changed Hollywood forever with a wink. The first portrayal of Cleopatra was by the actress Theda Bara in a 1917 silent film, lost to us now in a Fox Vault fire. Theda Bara's depiction was that of a femme fatale, a popular archetype at the time of an attractive and seductive female character, especially one who is likely to cause distress or disaster to a man who becomes involved with her. Accordingly, Fox Studios released scandalous details about the actress herself as part of marketing. She was the daughter of an Italian artist and an Arabian princess, read one handout. In fact, inscriptions were found on the walls of an ancient tomb in Greece that prophesied her birth, predicting, "She shall seem a snake to most men. She shall lead them to sin and destruction." This marketing worked on her fans initially, but soon they began to mock it. It was becoming absolutely ridiculous. Hollywood producers realized that they had a big problem on their hands. You simply could not take the character of Cleopatra seriously anymore, or you'd be laughed at.
You're not really going into battle to be killed.
No, Cleopatra, no man goes into battle to be killed.
Oh, but they do get killed. My sister's husband was killed in battle. You mustn't go.
What was Hollywood's solution to this? Simple. It was time to double down and laugh with the audiences. The wicked Cleopatra turned camp. An aesthetic and cultural movement has been rising in America by the 1960s. And no, I'm not talking about go-go boots and miniskirts. What I am talking about is the concept of camp, which philosopher Susan Sontag describes as the love of the exaggerated, the off, of things being what they are not. Camp is the furthest extension of the metaphor of life as theater. There's a simple love for exaggeration and artifice in campy movies. In simple words, imagine a movie that's so bad that it's good.
You are tearing me apart, Lisa!
Enter the 1963 film Cleopatra, directed by Joseph L. Mankiewicz, a 4-hour-long epic. Extravagance is taken to the next level in 60s Hollywood historical epics, as advertisements emphasize the great feats of labor needed to build these humongous replicas of the ancient world. Like this famous chariot race scene in Ben-Hur. In many ways, the stakes are very similar for both the protagonists of these films, whose main struggle is that against the Roman oppression of their homelands. Yet, the difference is how Judah Ben-Hur is portrayed with a great sense of seriousness, while Cleopatra is theatrically reinvented into a comic character. Played by Elizabeth Taylor, this Cleopatra's only wickedness lays in her bold sexuality, and her self-conscious insincerity makes her into a camp joke. In this scene, for example, Taylor's character hears Caesar approaching while she's in the middle of listening to a Catullus poem. She comes up with a plan.
We must not disappoint the mighty Caesar. The Romans tell fabulous tales of my bath and handmaidens.
By the time Caesar comes, Cleopatra has rearranged herself and her servants into something that looks uncomfortably like an orgy. The audience is expected to make fun of the contrived nature of this scene, but it is written so that they laugh with Cleopatra and not at her. She plays into our expectations of having exotic tastes, even though she would rather listen to poems. Camp Cleopatra mocks the crude taste of such pornographic displays. Yet, she chooses to display herself nonetheless. By rewriting her story to fit in with camp narratives at the time, the focus is taken away from Cleopatra's historical importance. she is portrayed merely as an attractive woman who knowingly serves the male gaze. What Camp Cleopatra offers the audience is pleasure in the form of unrestrained excess. Just take a look at this scene when Cleopatra enters Rome on a giant sphinx, accompanied by hundreds of exotic dancers. The performance itself is impressive and the spectacle immense, but it is not meant to be taken seriously. This part is my favorite, where the Roman band on the step tries to outplay the Egyptian trumpets. As Taylor's Cleopatra descends, she gives a knowing wink that she is the ringmaster of these theatrics. The legacy of Camp Cleopatra remains strong. HBO's Rome's depiction of Cleopatra in the early 2000s can only be described as that of a manic pixie dream girl. Rome's Cleopatra is a foreign corrupter of men, and it is seen as honorable that her lover Mark Antony chooses to die as a Roman and not an Egyptian at the end.
Let's use a proper Roman sword.
This scene, meant to be emotional in the show, involves a Roman soldier wiping the Egyptian makeup off of a dead Mark Antony, restoring his image as a Roman general. As much as I loved HBO's Rome, their choice to use 60 stereotypes of Camp Cleopatra seems outdated. A critic noted that Rome portrayed one of the most intelligent, sophisticated, and powerful women in the world as a sleazy, dissipated drug addict. This critic was none other than the filmmaker Theda Bara, who decided to take actions into her own hands, directing the Netflix documentary Queen Cleopatra.
I remember my grandmother saying to me, I don't care what they tell you in school, Cleopatra was black.
Queen Cleopatra was released in May 2023 to universal backlash, mainly because of director Theda Bara's choice to cast black actors as Cleopatra's family. Although there is a lot more that we could get into, the internet generally agreed that their problem in the show is that it was presenting itself as a documentary, and the experts on the show heavily implied that Cleopatra was black, despite no eyewitness accounts of her appearance surviving to this day. This backlash does not give us an excuse to stop thinking critically about how to portray Cleopatra. What the documentary offers is a portrayal that tries to see historical events from her perspective, revealing a more complete story of the Queen as a ruthless yet savvy political leader who was not afraid to kill her own siblings and show the political nature of her marriages. Director Garavi's heart was in the right place, questioning the way Cleopatra had been presented in the past. But critics' surface-level backlash failed to address her documentary's legitimate commentary. We must continue to move away from Hollywood's Cleopatra. The only source of agency that Camp Cleopatra has is her ability to theatrically use her sexual prowess and wealth to woo Caesar and Antony. At the end of the day, the question of who she really was remains. So was Cleopatra the Ford monster as described by Augustus? Or was she and Antony desperate lovers standing against the whole world, according to Shakespeare? Historical sources report that Cleopatra was a cunning queen, ruling a wealthy nation eyed by powerful Romans who want to conquer it for their growing empire. Cleopatra protected her independence by forming romantic alliances and pitting Romans against one another. Her first alliance was with Julius Caesar, who confirmed her on the throne of Egypt after he won control of the Roman Republic. Then it was with Mark Antony, who she knew needed backing against an ever-powerful Augustus Caesar in their competition for control of Rome after Caesar's death. Our perception of history has always been influenced by the people who imagine it and the society that they come from, and the figure of Cleopatra is no exception. Her womanness was always put before her qualities as a leader. In the 17th century, European writers assumed that she was weak simply because of her gender. And the bard himself used her to weave a tale about the destructive power of love. Philosopher Walter Benjamin warns us against just accepting such historical narratives out of complacency. He says that articulating the past historically does not mean recognizing it the way it really was. Every age must strive anew to wrest tradition away from the conformism that is working to overpower it. Hollywood must constantly revise works that build a perception of history, especially in the face of the misogynistic or uncritical writers that have reduced her story from a significant historical actor on the level of Cicero and Caesar to a woman who is either crazed by love or fabulously absent-minded. Instead of heavily Americanizing Cleopatra's history, the 2023 documentary could have drawn parallels between the international struggles against colonialism and Western domination, especially throughout the history of Africa, to her own resistance against the Roman Empire. What the 2023 documentary should have been saying is, no matter what they tell you, Cleopatra was an African queen who stood up to foreign annexation of the land she was born in.